Part of the finale of Dvorak's American Quartet. It was played by the Pavel Haas Quartet on their Supraphon disc, and that's one of the 3 recordings in contention for the chamber category in the 2011 Gramophone Classical Music Awards, given this year in association with Steinway and Sons. I'm James Jolly, Gramophone's editor-in-chief, and I'm delighted to be joined by Rob Cowan to talk about the chamber music shortlist. Now, Rob, before we talk about this trio of really rather impressive recordings, I wanted to ask you about the coupling on that Dvorak disc, his G major quartet, opus 106, a very different proposition from the much-loved American.
Well, late Dvorak is, I suppose, more expansive than the American quartet and some of the earlier quartets, so the very, very early quartets are extremely expansive. But this is a world that, in a way, reflects the type of mood you get in the American pieces as well, like the New World Symphony. But it returns to the world of Dvorak's Czech roots as well. And there's a meditative side to the music as well as a dancing side. And the two combined with the spirituality, which is very much a part of Dvorak's late music, make it a work I'm amazed that more quartets haven't taken up. But of course, the Pavel Haas, they're going to go through the Dvorak quartet. You expect to get an American from them, which they do beautifully and with some very unusual colours. But I think they're real masters of this particular piece, and hopefully they will do more quartets in the cycle. But I think 106 is particularly good.
And if you had to sort of characterise them as a quartet, you know, what their outstanding qualities are, how would you do that if it's possible?
Well, I think, not to sort of use a cliche, there's the blend of sound between all the 4 players. But I think they have developed a very sort of clean and clear and transparent sound. They've broken away from, I suppose, what you could call the traditional Czech sound of the Smetana and Janáček. Not that that was bad, they were wonderful quartets, but they had a very warm, vibrant tone. The Pavel Haas are related to that, but there's a sort of liveliness and almost a friskiness in their approach.
Well, I was going to say there's that incredible rhythmic vitality about their playing.
Absolutely. And of course that benefits the faster movements, but also a sense of concentration in the slower music, and that sense of line, so that you follow the music through as you would a narrative, and that's always been a distinctive. It was in their Janáček as well. You know, you felt they were telling you a story through the music.
Now, the 2 other discs feature violinists of the younger generation. Alina Ibragimova, joined by Cédric Tiberghien for Beethoven's violin sonatas, or perhaps we should correctly call them sonatas for piano and violin, and Wilde Frang, joined by Michael Lifitz in sonatas by Grieg and Strauss with the Bartók solo sonata. Let's start with the Ibragimova-Tiberghien disc. This is the 3rd volume in their series of the Beethoven violin sonatas, and they've got really fantastic reviews.
Well, that's such intelligent playing. I mean, I have to say, we've had some marvellous CDs of Beethoven violin sonatas. There was the Isabel Faust set, which was exceptional, and it's almost an embarrassment. Ibragimova comes along and Tiberghien, and they produce performances that are just as arresting as the Faust Melnikov performances. Hugely persuasive playing. It goes beneath the notes, and yet it has a sort of surface glitter as well. So it operates at 2 separate levels. It also has a sense of style, in a way, a sense of period style, so that it's in no way old-fashioned. And again, I wouldn't necessarily say that's a bad thing, but it's alert and alive. And as with all fine young performers, it makes you listen to the music afresh, so that it's almost as if you're hearing certain movements from these sonatas, because they're fantastic works, but not all performances of them are as illuminating as these. But certainly I felt as if I was listening to some of the movements for the first time.
There seems to be a sort of poetry here. I felt that in the Isabella Faust Melnikov, they're quite extreme sometimes. They do some pretty dramatic things where there aren't the extremes here, but there's a wonderful sense of cohesion.
Well, the cohesion and also tonal colouring from both the pianist and the violinist. It's sort of sinewy and light at the same time. And the combination of qualities, it gives you quite a sort of varied canvas. And that's a very prominent aspect of the performances of all of them, especially this volume, which has a number of masterpieces. The Opus 30 set are such wonderful works anyway. And if you don't know the pieces, it's a great way to get to know them, because they project them with such vividness.
And of course they end up with the famous Kreutzer Sonata.
Yes, absolutely. Marvellous performance of a great work. So yeah, so the crowning glory of the set, I suppose.
Now, if one turns to the Wilde-Frang set, we've got two violin sonatas, piano and violin, the Grieg and the Richard Strauss, both young works. And I suppose one of the truly great works in the solo violin repertoire, the Bartók Sonata, which was, of course, a very late work for him. I mean, let's talk about the Grieg and the Strauss first, because these are both works that sit sort of on the edge of the repertoire, much more popular on disc than in the concert hall. What did you think of her performances?
Well, the Grieg isn't often recorded. The third sonata gets an outing quite a lot, but the first is very rarely played, normally by people who record all three of the sonatas. I thought it had wit, it had folk-like inflections to the violin lines, it was lively, it was wonderfully expressive in the slower music. I thought it was extremely beautiful. In fact, I would say of recent recordings of that work's probably the best I've heard in a number of years. The Strauss, you're up against Heifetz, because for years his two recordings of that sonata were the true benchmarks, and to be absolutely honest, they are fabulous. And the thing that impressed me about Frang was the fact that in no respect does she attempt to imitate Heifetz. None of the phrasing is like his, or very little of it. Maybe some of the very physical projection is like him, but the tone is extremely different, the sort of colouring. It's intense, but it's not intense in quite the same way. And although I still adore the Heifetz records, especially the second one with Brooke Smith, this one has a liveliness about it. It's a bit like the world of Don Juan in a way. The music's very similar, very, very lyrical. A very strong piece. I think it's quite underrated, the Strauss.
Now, the Bartók solo sonata.
Well, that I was just listening to just before we got together again, and that is incredible, you know.
Because you're up against some pretty formidable competition
for
there.
goodness sake. All sorts of people playing that, starting with Menuhin himself in the 40s, who made the first recording of it. But the rhythm of the playing, in the last movement, which is treacherous anyway, you feel that she's absolutely in command of this rhythmic language that was so much part of Bartók's style, and she's totally secure technically. The attack, the grip of the bow on the string all the time, the depth of feeling in the melodia in the middle movement, the security of the fugue. I want to keep on going down the street, because every time we've had so many versions of this work that have been good, but I don't think I've enjoyed one as much as this, because I'm not going to say it makes it an easy listen, because it isn't. It's a tough piece, a wonderful piece, and well worth the effort of listening to it if you don't know it. But because it's so securely focused, hold your concentration for the duration, which is marvellous.
So a powerful addition to the EMI roster.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I can't wait to hear. I hope she does the two sonata, the piano sonatas, maybe the early one as well. You know, it's great. It's great when you hear a violinist and you sort of imagine in your mind all the works you'd like to hear her play. Now, I can't remember the last time I felt like that about a violinist, saying, "Oh God, I wish he or she would record." Maybe Gidon Kramer was the last one. Would record the whatever it is, you know. It was normally the Oistrachs and the Heifetzers, but she's special.
Vilde Frang playing Bartók on her disc of sonatas by Grieg, Strauss and Bartók, and a reminder that EMI release is one of the 3 recordings shortlisted for the chamber category. The winner will be revealed on October the 6th when the Gramophone Awards are announced. Meanwhile, look out for these regular podcasts or subscribe to them on iTunes. For full details of the Gramophone Classical Music Awards in association with Steinway & Sons, go to gramophone.co.uk. Many thanks for listening.